a perfect morning here in Scandinavia. I mean, just look at this. What a beautiful morning. A beautiful morning.
Wait a minute!
A few moments later.
What?
Alright, boys. Let's get to work.
Eventually.
Yay!
Take your time. Not like the white ones.
What's up, guys? PK here. The Javelin. Is it amazing? Or is it amusing? Or is it both? Who knows? But in today's video, we're gonna find out. So I promised you guys a Javelin video, and so today we're trying a new series type, so to speak, you know, gotta switch it up a little bit, in which we're going full in-depth, okay, in-depth on the Javelin. Because I think the Javelin is a very interesting weapon, and if you ask me right now, is it amazing or is it amusing, I actually would say both. Depends on the context. But anyways, let's get to it. So here we are on the modded realm, just, you know, hanging out, chilling, looking at Sigmar. Problem number one. No, here we are on the modded realm with the Javelin. Now, firstly, before we get to breakpoints and such, let's talk a little bit about what the Javelin is similar to, what it can and cannot do, what it's good or bad at, and sort of the pros and cons. I think there are two weapons where it would be useful for comparison, right? So, but starting, we need to look at the Javelin first, right? So it has 6 effective dodge counts, an effective dodge count of 6, plus 20% in dodge distance, which gives it a lot of mobility compared to, let's say, a longbow with 3 dodges and 0%. Now, the two weapons I would compare to is the longbow, but also the throwing axes of the dwarf. Now, the throwing axes on the dwarf have higher damage, so higher base damage and higher armor damage, but less cleave and stagger. Same mobility, but there's a little bit more to it, right? Because the reason the throwing axes are worse than the Javelin is threefold. Firstly, the throwing axes don't have any melee attacks, which I think they should have, if I'm being perfectly honest, but they don't, right? So that's the first aspect that's better on the Javelin. The second is the throwing arc. The throwing axes tend to drop off very sort of significantly at longer distances, making them harder for accurate shots at long ranges. And thirdly, the throwing axes are on the dwarf. See what I did there? Which obviously makes them worse. Now, the second comparison I would make is the longbow. Now, the longbow and the Javelin have a lot in common. The primary difference being, of course, if we look aside from the melee attacks, because I feel like the fact that the Javelin has melee attacks is sort of equivalent to having a weapon special, right? It's a slight niche thing that can definitely be used effectively at right times, but it's never gonna be, it's not something like that you build around, okay? So so that's sort of just, you know, to add on top, right? But if you look at the damage profiles of the charge shot on the longbow and the throw attack on the Briar Javelin, then you can see that the longbow has less base damage and less armor damage. Well, okay, so we can now conclude that the Javelin should have easier and better breakpoints than the longbow. No, not necessarily. And that depends on difficulty. You see, I think the Javelin is amazing on Legend, and sort of meh on Cataclysm, okay? Bear with me here. Now, as you can see, 33.5, remember that, and 28.75, right? I have here a Waystalker with no talents and no power versus modifiers, right? So let's take a look. If we grab one of these armored dummies, this is Bob. Bob, you're our friend now, right? Whoops. There we go. Stay there, Bob. Right, so just one more time, 28 on the longbow and 33.5. But as you can see, first of all, wait, it just dealt 40 damage. And if we were to take the longbow, it dealt 34.5. Wait, are these numbers not accurate? Yes, they are. But you have to remember that as far as ranged weapons are concerned, when stagger is equal to 0, 1, or 2, the three sort of stagger counts, then damage will increase by 20%, 20%, and 40%. Okay? In other words, the first attack always has a 20% damage buff bonus with nothing else applied, just automatically, which is why if I take 3 shots here, 40, 40, 46, 40. If you keep throwing, obviously, you're gonna keep being in stagger 2, but you, as you can see, you're always gonna have that extra 20%. Critical hit also puts them in stagger 2. There we go, right? And you could do the same with the longbow if there we go, right? Same demonstration. So that's how that works, right? That's the first thing to take into account. That's why the numbers are slightly different. But as you recall, right, the charge attack 34.5 is less than 40. Big brain, right? But let's try to take a look if we do a headshot here, because as you remember, the Javelin has higher armor damage. 72.25. Well, that's interesting, because the longbow deals 94.5. That was a 118 damage critical hit. That was a 103 damage critical hit. Okay, that means the finesse multiplier of the longbow is better. It's higher. That is what determines a weapon's damage modifier when it comes to headshots and critical hits. But it gets weirder, right? Because let's try a critical headshot. I have to wait a little bit in between. 149, just so we don't put it in stagger mode. And if we were to take the longbow, then for some weird reason, which is very complicated and related to math, that you can see if you really like numbers and really like math, then I can recommend 𝒮𝔴𝔞𝔤𝔤𝔢𝔯𝒮𝔮𝔲 like 2-point series guide on damage specific numbers, 150.5 here compared to 149. In other words, the difference between a critical headshot between the two weapons is way less than the difference between a single critical hit or a single headshot. Also, there's a significant damage sort of difference between a headshot and a critical hit. It gains way more from critical hits than it does from headshots. All of these are sort of significant factors, right? Now, the Javelin only has 3 ammo in total, unless you're playing on the Waystalker, or using a Handmaiden's Talent, for example, right? So, sort of the biggest downside to the Javelin compared to a longbow, in my opinion, is the fact that not only do you not only do you not have a lot of ammo for spamming, but you also cannot use ammo crates or ammo pickups, which I actually find to be the wrong. I feel like they should still apply. Like even if you have 3 shots, then I really feel like an ammo crate should work, and I also feel like ammo pickups should work. But that's just my opinion. They don't, right? Which makes it way worse in a lot of different scenarios. Right, so essentially we have a situation where the damage difference, like where the Javelin deals more base damage, but in practice it deals a lot less damage when it comes to critical hits and headshots. In other words, the only scenario in which the Javelin damage-wise per shot outperforms the longbow is body shots, right? So single target is boom, body shot, boom, body shot, boom, body shot, right? And when it comes to breakpoints, the thing is, it has way better breakpoints for Legend than it does for Kata. Now you might say, PK, all weapons have better breakpoints for Legend than they do for Kata. Of course, because Kata, the minions have higher HP, so the breakpoints are harder to hit. or so very generally speaking, of course it's going to be harder on Kata than it is on Legend, but I think it's significantly harder in this instance. I feel like it's way harder to structure a really good build with the Javelin on Kata than it is on Legend. However, it does have one huge advantage over the longbow, which we will get to in a bit. But let's try to take a look here at some of the breakpoints, right? On Legend, you can already one-shot headshot storm vermins. You can also hit a one-shot body shot breakpoint. So you can just like dead storm vermin, dead storm vermin, dead storm vermin, dead storm vermin, right? Of course, if you don't headshot, then you have to reload, which I'm not gonna lie, I really hate this reload function. I feel like I'm playing Outcast Engineer, like cranking up my gun every time. It's the same with the throwing axes. I'm honestly, I know it has infinite ammo, but I don't know. I wish it would, like, it wouldn't make sense if it worked like the Moonfire bow, but I don't like this mechanic of holding R for this long. Because as I said, in really intense games, it's like, then what happens sometimes, especially with the first reload, when you're completely out and you're like, ah, shoot. And then this happens. Right? Where you're like, because you're trying to aim, it stops the reload mechanic from going through, which is hella fucking annoying. Of course, I could just start being a scrub and try to aim too early, but when you have an assassin in your face or a gunner or something, then you want to aim you want to perform it as quickly as possible. So I feel like once you start the reload mechanic, it really should be an automatic finish, because that's kind of annoying when that happens, and you're like stuck suddenly thinking that you have one ammo, and you're like, you know, it looks like you pull it all the way, and like, hey, and then you realize like, oh, you know, you may even like have done like this, switch weapons, and only realize moments after that, oh, I'm in a fist fight now, right? Which is kind of annoying, but that's beside the point. Looking at the breakpoints again here, you can already one-shot body shot all specials on Legend. One-shot headshot. You can already one-shot headshot all specials on Legend, and the same goes on Kata, with the exception, notable exception, of the Strangler. You see, you actually need enhanced power and 20% versus Skaven and Monster just to one-shot headshot a Strangler. That is a 30% just to be able to one-shot a Strangler in the head. Okay, that's a huge commitment, but thankfully there is a way around it, sort of a build that takes care of that. But on Legend, all the breakpoints are super easy. Again, you don't need anything for assassins. Let's see, you can hit a 40% or 30 plus enhanced one-shot body shot for Stranglers, 10%. That's all you need for a one-shot body shot for gas rats. You already headshot monks. You can also one-shot body shot monks with 30%. You can essentially take 20% versus Skaven, right? Plus enhanced power. And then depending on your preference, you could then go for a bunch of things. You could go for Monster to get this body shot on here. You could go for Berserker to get the body shot on Monks. You could go for Armored to get the body shot on Storm Vermin. You have plenty of options, right? You can already one-shot headshot Beastigores and two-shot body shot Beastigores. Yet on Kata, this is probably one of the most significant downsides, I think, to the Javelin, is that you need 40% Chaos Armor to one-shot headshot a Beastigore, right? You can hit that with 20%, or no, I believe 10%. Is it 10% plus enhanced on the longbow? Don't hold me up on that. It's either 10 or 20% plus enhanced power on the longbow in order to hit that, making it significantly easier to hit that breakpoint. And that's quite a significant breakpoint. You want to be able to one-shot headshot a Beastigore. You don't want 3 shots, which is what it takes, unless you have 30% plus enhanced power, which is also a huge commitment, because that in of itself prevents you from hitting all of these up here, which are arguably more important, right? But on Legend, it's pretty straightforward. You don't really need that much. 10% Chaos Infantry. Now you've got Leeches and Stormers, right? I mean, so literally you're gonna go for on Legend. You should go for, in my opinion, 20% Skaven, and then depending on preference, you could go for 10% Infantry, right, to get these two, because you already get the gas rat one, right? So you go for 10% Infantry to get this one. You go for 10% Monster to get this one. You could also go for crit chains, because it has really good critical hit modifiers. You could also go for Armored. With the Armored, you'd hit both the Storm Vermin Breakpoint up here. You would unfortunately not hit the three-shot headshot on Chaos Warriors, which is kind of sad. That would be nice to hit. But again, I'll leave that up to you guys. So I would say either infantry, crit chance, or monsters as the last property. So 𝒮𝔞𝔤𝔢𝔯𝒮𝔮𝔲𝔞𝔄, attack speed on the charm, 𝒮𝔬𝔞𝔤𝔢𝔯𝒮𝔮𝔲𝔞𝔄, critical hit chance or infantry, or power versus armor. So as for kata, it's a little bit more complicated, I think. I think you need to go in a similar direction, but it gets a bit more complicated, because if you look here at the Stormvermin breakpoints, right, so you need 20% to one-shot headshot a Stormvermin. You want to be able to headshot Stormvermins, right? It's such a huge part of the armor damage, right? You need 30% for a one-shot body shot on flame rats and gun rats. That's not as crucial as long as you got a one-shot, as long as you can one-shot headshot them, which you already can. That is the sort of the most significant one. But it is nice to be able to one-shot body shot them. Then we got stranglers, right? That's the important one, where you need 20% just to one-shot headshot it. But you could get that. Let's just say you run 20% 𝒮𝔬𝔤𝔢𝔯𝒮𝔮𝔬𝔞. Okay, you're covered for the strangler, and you're covered for the Stormvermins, right? You're also covered for the monks, so you can one-shot headshot monks, and you can one-shot body shot monks. That's important. A two-shot body shot monk, sorry. But then you have the Beastigore problem. You also have the Berserkers problem. You would also have the Leeches and Stormers problem, and you would also have the Mauler problem. You also have the Chaos Warrior problem. I mean, it's not really a problem. So in my opinion, it's actually a very similar build you're going to go for. It's just that you are going to have some struggles with either monks or berserkers, depending on what side of the faction sort of breakpoints you decide to go. Personally, I would definitely be going for 20% 𝒮𝔬𝔤𝔢𝔯𝒮𝔮𝔬𝔞, and then either armored. I think that's the best one personally for kata, but you could also be going for crit chance, right? Or crit chance and armored and leave out the attack speed. But we want attack speed, because that's the next thing I need to mention, is that attack speed, just like with the throwing axes, is what determines your reload speed, right? Your ability to recall. And this is an interesting like that. This is an interesting build that I did the other day on the Handmaiden, 1 2 3 1 2 3, where you essentially maximize your critical hit chance. Okay, 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, let's try that again. This time we do like this. You see? Like, the recall is significantly faster. And what you can do is, because you have the critical hit ulti, you can sort of increase your chance to critical hit stuff, right? Which is going to allow you to draw them out really, really quickly. And of course, then you also have the added attack speed from just dodging sideways, which again allows you to also fire them really quickly, which is definitely one way to go here, which is probably what I would do on the Handmaiden if I really wanted to use the Javelin. Again, I'm not going to lie to you, I think the Moonfire bow and the longbow overall are better. But let's be real, the Javelin is insanely satisfying to use as a weapon. And I could see situations where the Javelin is actually really, really, really good. A couple of situations. I think personally I would be maining it on the Waystalker, right, with the double shot. That build will look something like this. But you could also be 𝒮𝔬𝔤𝔤𝔤𝔤𝔤, because she has added critical hit chance to her base. She also has cruelty, and the critical hits from the Briar Javelin does not fuck around, okay? I'm telling you. Boom, right? So with that extra critical hit damage, that is absolutely insane, right? I mean, that's some insane damage right there. Or you could also, especially if you're playing like Chaos Waste, then you could be going for the guaranteed crits here. Like, you're just gonna get more and more crits, which is also really nice. You could also be running in normal mode, in which case I'd probably be getting Scrounger if I was playing the Sister of the Thorn. Simply, again, the guaranteed crits. Each of those are gonna they're gonna stack up, right? They're not really gonna stack up because, you know, you do consume them simply by attacking like this. But, you know, assuming people cast, you need to notice that it's there, and then you can sort of exploit a bunch of critical hit throws. But really, the most amazing part, in my opinion, about the Javelin, like the truly underrated aspect, I think, that it has, is really quite simple. And it comes down to one thing. And that is the stagger of the throw, okay? So watch this. If I'm gonna go here, Cataclysm, Private, just to get it the lobby in Cata, then I'm gonna take a Chaos Warrior right here. Then I'm going to turn on the AI. Whoops. Right. Now, see that? Woo. Not even trying to headshot him here. Like, the stagger of this attack is insane. Okay, if you headshot, you have a guaranteed cancel. Like, even on a Chaos Warrior heavy, okay? Like, that is like, that requires shields with certain, like, opportunists with certain shields, right? There are, like, it's hard to explain just how insane it is, just because it can cancel goddamn Chaos Warrior heavies. Like, you see? Like, unless something's broken about the modern realm here for me, that is absolutely crazy that you can do that. Also, it just looks cool. I mean, just look at that Chaos Warrior. Right? So I think the Javelin altogether is an insanely satisfying weapon to use. It has a really high skill floor, right? So just keep that in mind. I would not encourage anyone that, so that if they're starting out on playing the elf, then I don't think the Javelin is the weapon for you. I think people are gonna tend to use the melee way too much. I think the melee is sort of a nice niche that you can use, especially when you're playing on the Waystalker, right? You're gonna be using that just to get that nice last hit, so that you can proceed to do the double throw, which for some reason has bugged for me here on the modern realm, and essentially means that every time I have the buff, it doesn't get consumed, and I can infinite double throw. Doesn't work that way, I'm afraid, in on the official realm. But that's sort of just a nice niche way you can go about it. That's also going to allow you to hit certain two-shot body shot breakpoints here, like for example the Storm Vermin two-shot body shot breakpoint. Right? If you hit that and you got the double throw, well, now that's a one-shot, right? So there's plenty of things to dive in on the deep end with. Also, attack speed, obviously, is a lot of fun, simply because, you know, you can recall them fairly fast, but also just that is some nice damage. Then we have the strength pod. The strength pod is, as always, absolutely insane, especially for armor damage. Let's see if we can get a critical hit here. Boom! Right? So it has really good boss damage, it has really good mobility. It does lack a bit of consistency. And what I mean by that is simply you have very little ammo in stock, right? So like one of the primary differences that I want you guys to sort of understand and take into consideration when picking the weapon is that how often do you feel like you run out of ammo on the longbow? Personally, almost never. Almost never. Like, assuming you don't, like you aren't completely new and you use light attacks for no reason when you don't have to, then with the headshot ammo replenish, it is so rare in a quick play game that I am even at risk of running out of ammo, right? With the Javelin, obviously you never run out of ammo in the long term, but you constantly run out of ammo in the short term, right? So all it takes is missing a shot here and there, and then suddenly you're in a situation where you have to do this really awkward reload mechanic, where with the longbow, you miss the shot, you already have the next shot ready. Once I got used to it, like at first, I really just had to get used to not meleeing as much as I wanted to with the weapon. Often you run out in a situation where you really just didn't want to run out, right? And it happens more often than you might think, especially again on Kata, where there's a lot of special. You throw, you throw, you throw, you may have killed all three, but now you have to melee, right? And you don't have your shots. And because you can't really use ammo crits and stuff like that, that's really a huge hindrance, which means you have to be very conservative with when you actually take the shots. And I like to spam with the Javelin. Everyone likes to spam with the Javelin, because that's what's fun about the Javelin, right? It's just Javelin from, you know, start to finish. But it can also be risky, so just keep that in mind. But I think the Javelin also has potential, if you know what you're doing on the Elf. And yeah, that's pretty much all I had. Of course, now we got the HIJG, high intensity Javelin gameplay, so let's get to that. So here we are, headset applied, simply so that way I don't have to actually bother with the fact that the audio might go into the microphone. But firstly, I clicked a random frame in the clip, like this is from 3 different Cataclysm double Emperor Deeds I played, and I clicked a random frame, and it looks like we're dual wielding javelins. Like, you could dual wield javelins, Fatshark, I'm down. Okay, I'm sold. Okay, if we're dual wielding javelins, that's a whole nother world. Okay, if a dual wield javelins, I give up. I concede to the javelin if it's dual wield. Okay, but let's take a look here. So
Now I know how an apple feels.
I have cut a bunch of the boarding parts out, so these are not full games. But one thing I've noticed about myself with the javelin, again, is that I want to use it way too much when I use it, right? So like now I'm just being critical of myself. Like compared to the longbow, I would shoot whenever it's best to shoot, and I would only shoot when okay, here is like value at low risk, right? But with the javelin, I'm like, it's like I want to constantly just use the javelin, right? And even when I possibly didn't have to use the javelin. And keep in mind, this is an extra, like double health, extra special damage over time, double 𝒮𝔮𝔲𝔞𝔤𝔤𝔢𝔯𝔮𝔲𝔞𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐𝔐 I think. I'm sure we'll see it momentarily. I seem to recall that I fucked up here. Yeah. But to be fair, this was the first game, okay? It's gonna be awesome, trust me. Once I found the flow of things. Because I really do feel this is a weapon that requires some flow. Like, I know flow seems like a very poorly defined concept. But you really need to find the rhythm, so to speak, with it. Because you see what just happened there? That's a really good example, right? Of what happens when you don't find the rhythm. So I take a throw, I recall, I see the javelin, and I think visually this is a mistake on Fat Shark's part, I have to say. I feel like the moment the javelin is visually in your right hand, it cannot be the case after. That is a visual cue to say you have the javelin in your hand. Yet if you try to aim too early, you don't have the ammo. You know what I mean? I feel like the moment you can actually see the whole javelin there has to be the moment where it would stick in your inventory. And that has screwed me over many times. So make sure you hold it down for long enough, right? Make sure you hold down for long enough. That is like alpha and omega. Trust me, that one thing has bothered me so many times whilst I've been sort of... I've been maining the javelin recently for the sake of this video, right? So I've really been playing it a lot. And then sort of this was the day of high intensity games where I actually recorded stuff. Just to get that double shot. Again, that is the advantage it has on the waiststock over the longbow, is that you don't have to switch weapon to get that double shot. That kind of sucked. I was gonna use the ulti for extra ammo, which is another reason why I like to play it on the waiststock. It's again because when you find yourself in these awkward, oh I have no ammo situations, right? You use an ulti, get a few elite kills or special kills, and boom, you have your ammo.
Keep a sharp watch, Barden. I'm relying on you to warn me of any more attacks.
Aye, I'll do that. I reckon it's more like it.
No, don't worry. I'm keeping a sharp watch too. Kill that fire rat! I don't want to burn.
Go let it kill, Becky.
I am a child of Athel Warren. I'm not bested by work contraptions.
Coming through.
Now notice here, this is one thing it's even better at than the longbow, and the longbow is already good at this. It is the piercing cleave and stagger of the ranged attacks. So like if you can get a perfect lineup like I did there, it's absolutely insane at just cleaving through hordes like they're butter, like literally like they're butter. And that's one aspect that's really satisfying about this weapon, not gonna lie. It's not the most useful. I mean, it is useful when, you know, you have a lineup like I do here. But that's not gonna help you when you don't have a lineup, but you could say that about any weapon, I guess. It's just really, really, really good at it. Like, it might quite possibly be the single best weapon in the game at cleaving through hordes. Like, it's just removing a straight line of hordes. I can think of no other ranged weapon that does that better. Maybe the bolt staff? Maybe the bolt staff, fully charged. But that's where we're at, right?
Count your kills all you like.
Also, wait, what? Can we just see that again? How the fuck did... How did I get there so quickly? God damn, I must have turned around at the worst time.
It'll change nothing.
Preserve me. What was that?
So notice how all this time I've had my javelin out, right? Instead of my melee weapon. Which is also why I'm looking so much around me, right? Because normally I'd grab my longbow out, take a shot, go straight back to my melee weapon, right? But with the javelin, I don't know, that just doesn't feel right. With the javelin, it's like, it's only when I need to block that I take out the weapon. And the problem with only taking out the weapon when you need to block is that when you have one of those moments, which are common in Vermintide, where suddenly something's attacking you from behind that you weren't aware of, right? But if you have to switch weapon first, then even with the indicator, you're not gonna block in time, right? So can I just say here, this is goddamn special. And you see, even with this low HP here, when I really should only be focusing on my melee attacks, I also know if I don't kill specials meanwhile, then we're fucked.
You're sorely winded, Briar.
So one other detail where it also performs slightly better than the longbow is the time from you aim until you have your fully charged shot back. There's no fully, like there is no non-fully charged ranged attack on the javelin, but with the longbow, to get the charge shot, that is a longer cast time, so to speak, or shoot time, whatever you want to call it, throw time, than it is on the javelin, making the javelin slightly more dynamic in combat, slightly more versatile in the, assuming you have the ammo. And that was the damage over time. I was confused as well. From I was like, wait, what happened? I was like, what happened? Oh yeah, the damage over time. Forgot about that. I should also add that, let's say you were to put on a trait like Hunter and crit with your melee weapon, like with the melee aspect of the weapon, then you don't apply Hunter, and you don't get Hunter, if I recall correctly, right? So unlike with other weapons, it doesn't quite work that way, I'm afraid. Don't hold me up on that. I seem to recall testing it, but I actually don't. I seem to recall that was the case. I'll put it on the screen.
Don't go pulling switches without warning, right? Yes, we killed the hot rat! Good enough, please, dead
I think we broke the warp fire door. Blazing fire is never a match for the real thing.
Yes, that's Grindelwald!
But I do feel like it takes a while to get used to because of the melee attacks that you have. it's a weird psychological effect where with the longbow, the moment I felt threatened, right, I would equip my melee weapon that can block. But because you can, in theory, melee attack, you know, small groups of, you know, trash minions, then you feel inclined to do so at times when you really shouldn't, right? Like by the time you're caught off guard, oh shit, these are like these 4 minions are actually, because the cleave on the light attacks is shit, dog shit, absolute trash. It's like hitting with a one-handed axe. You can only hit one target at a time, right? Which essentially means the moment there's more than like 3 trash minions, then you can't melee it without getting hit. Like you can, but you also like really need to be like to watch out for that, right? And so you just end up in these situations where you should totally have equipped your melee weapon, but you didn't, because you felt like I have the javelin, so like I'm fine. Also, I checked and that was a hit. But I didn't have the... No, I should have had the breakpoint. That's a weird actually. No, that's for headshots, that's why. And that's why we lost. This is the exact same beat, I believe. It's 3rd damage over time. Hold on. Yeah, there it is. Yes, it's the exact same. So again, double damage. Which of course means we can't one-shot headshot. Unless we get a critical hit, as you can see there. And extra specials. But I think the extra specials really emphasize what you have to do well with the Javelin to a lesser degree in a normal game, right? So extra specialty on Kata is way worse when it comes to special spawns than it is on Legend. Because it is a multiplier. Goddamn gunners. So many specials. So I almost like playing Onslaught. What's that, 1,000? I like that feeling. You really have to get used to that feeling of having to switch weapon to block despite you having melee attacks. I don't know, it's a weird feeling that the throwing axes at least don't have, just because they don't have melee attacks. Like, it's, with the exception of the Waystalker, I'd almost go as far as to say that the melee attacks is almost a disability. Like, I know it isn't once you get used to it, but it's just a very hard, yeah, at least I struggle with, maybe it's just because I've played so much Vermintide, you know, maybe it's actually just because of the amount of Vermintide, like the amount of hours I've played, which just made it harder to change the very basic notion of, like, you know, ranked, you know, attack, melee attack equals being able to block. But it did work eventually. You see, right there it happened again. You see, right there, that almost screwed me over again. Thatcher, if you're here, I really feel like that has to change. I'm not saying you have to increase the time it takes. Just just make sure that the animation, as soon as you get to the point where you actually have the javelin.
gunner's dead.
The Packmaster's done for!
So many specials.
Assassin rat's dead! Kerillian's beard!
Those words, Martin.
Plague worshippers coming in! Rat ain't done, alright? I'm a bloody battering rat, that's what I am!
Let's right over here.
But what I'm trying to say is you really need to beat that mentality into your head.
Assassin inside!
Otherwise, otherwise you are gonna have some slightly embarrassing fails. Which, to be fair, I had myself.
That's all.
This is the last game we're gonna watch.
An adequate kill. I keep Copenhagen through. Solid cracking. Playing with fire.
Still here?
That was a good example of like the special kill before. That was easier because of the javelin, like compared to the longbow, for example, because of the draw time of a longbow.
Corraki, I'll wager I'd kill them all. The elf kills another. You forest folk would make good allies if not so much furious.
Allies. Adults and children are not.
And this is again same deed with the specials and the double damage and HP.
Why are we off to some lumberfoot bastion? Shouldn't we focus on the Pack-Sworn Gate? If the fort falls, there's no safe.
You can't hear it, but I said in DC that let's pull, push him down.
Make haste to the fort, mayflies. The gods of stars
I thought he was going to charge me. Fortunately, he didn't. Thankfully, the dwarf was willing to commit. Props to APR there. Again, that's the situation. Actually, that's a good talking point here. I just wanna emphasize. Absolute props to the dwarf here for, again, after we establish we're gonna push him off, right? Just trusting the team that, oh, if I get the boss there, he will be pushed down, and then getting me up won't be a problem, right? I think a lot of players in that situation would be way too scared of getting pushed off, at least being unwilling to risk it at all, right? For the sake of actually killing the boss. And I can understand it in quick play, especially if you haven't made any, deals. If no one's mentioned that you, like, if you haven't mentioned your intentions that we should push him off, then I probably wouldn't do it either. But assuming that the call has been made, then props for the trust. Oh, just look at that! Look at that cleave, though. That is one of these amazingly satisfying aspects of this weapon. It's just even a beastman horde, when you get that headshot, it just cleaves through the whole horde. Like three, 4 javelins, and the whole row is just disappeared.
Some of the dead.
It's a fire rat. Healing rock, mayflies. Black rat. Cure it. Fire rat.
Also, watch out for friendly fire. It has pretty significant friendly fire. And again, when you play this style of, like, sort of javelin main, I would say, is what I'm doing here, right? So, like, I'm only using sword and dagger when I really feel like I have to. Then you You can get some awkward moments, you know, where you accidentally screw over your teammates by hitting them in the back, which will deal a lot of damage. So watch out for that. Again, a moment where, I mean, I didn't notice here that I didn't get the pull through, but it's still so frustrating that you sort of, yeah, I don't know. I feel like the animation needs to be changed. They don't have to change the time it takes to recall it, like not at all. They just have to make the animation sort of equivalent to whether or not you have recalled the javelin, right? So that once the javelin actually shows up in your hand, that has to be the moment where you actually have the javelin, even if you cancel it at that point. As I said earlier, I do sometimes still feel like a little bit like an outcast engineer charging up his his ultimate. And the fact that you get no joy from finding an ammo crate. Whenever there's an ammo crate, you're like, yeah, oh no, oh yeah, that's right, that's not how that works. Which is a little bit disappointing, not gonna lie.
Shoot much, but hits little.
Well, the black knife in as well.
Ha! Dead assassin, but not before time.
But here, let's hope the black powder inside is dry.
That's a good throw. Followed by 2 not so good throws.
The Packmaster Queen. Respect the dead.
Four javelins later, Mauler's still alive. That gas-rat trolling. But you have to ask yourself the question, would this game have been easier with the Moonfire bow? And the answer, in my opinion, is yes. We didn't compare it to the Moonfire bow, and there's a reason for that. And which primarily comes down to the sort of way the attacks work, right? So the Moonfire bow has its AoE, its dot damage, it doesn't seem as much one-to-one, right? But if you think about it, the Moonfire bow also has infinite ammo. It's just that it recharges itself. So in a lot of ways, I feel like the Moonfire bow and the Javelin are also similar, where the Javelin kills things more instantaneously, but the Moonfire bow recharges itself. And personally, I would pick the recharging itself part, because the problem with both is that neither of them can spam attack. Right? Neither of them can take a ammo crate and get any value from that, and I can understand that with a Moonfire bow because it's sort of a magical bow, right? And I guess this is sort of a magical javelin because you recall that with R, but I don't know, it still only feels like a projectile to me. It doesn't feel like it has that magical effect. And obviously the Moonfire bow would be insanely broken if it could actually get value from ammo crates in a way that I don't feel like the Javelin would. I think overall, just to sort of be a little bit more conclusive about it, I think the Javelin has potential. I think it is a good ranged weapon overall. Way better than the throwing axes. But, with that said, would I ever be using the Javelin if I really felt like I had to carry a game, right? Probably not. Probably not. I think... I don't know how to... like, I think the Javelin, again, it really has a potential, right? And but I do think I haven't tried it in Weaves, right? So it's hard to say. I haven't tried it on Onslaught yet. This is the closest, also why we're watching this, because it's the closest I got to sort of modded level difficulties with it so far. But I do feel less potent with it from time to time than I do with the longbow. But again, I've used the longbow an amount of hours that are just incomprehensible compared to the Javelin, right? So time will tell whether I think it's better or worse than the longbow overall. I think it could be better, potentially, but I do think they're roughly equally good. Roughly. I would personally right now go for the longbow. If I like had to. If you told me, if you don't win this game, PK, we're gonna slice your throat, right? Longbow or Javelin, right? I would go for longbow 100, like any day of the week at the moment, right? But I could definitely see the Javelin potentially being having more potential value extracted from the weapon than the longbow. But not Moonfire Bow. I think the Moonfire Bow is still objectively better than the Javelin in almost any conceivable scenario. The only thing the Javelin really does better, I think, is the time to kill, right? The fact that you hit the target, then it's dead. As opposed to the damage over time effect of the Moonfire Bow, right? But the problem here, like the difference between the Moonfire Bow is when you run out of shots, you can switch to a melee weapon and block, and you know in a few seconds, if you just keep dodging, you have your shot. Whereas with the Javelin, you have to find space for this really awkward mechanic, where you have to sort of, you can't have anything that's capable of attacking you, right? So you need to create a lot of space just to get that next shot. So you can't just rely, if there's a gunner shooting and you're like, oh shit, and but there's also minions around you, then you're out of options, right? Then you have to be able to find cover or space or something, enough space that you can draw that weapon, which is doable. Don't get me wrong, it's mostly of the time it will be doable, but it's definitely not easy. So I think the skill requirement of the Javelin is way higher than any other ranged weapon of the elf, at the very least. Which is not a bad thing. Again, that sort of demands that you're gonna that demands you to play sort of conservatively, and to some degree it gives you good habits, right? Because the margins are really quite thin. Kind of like the difference between a med kit and a health pot, right? I mean, this might be a weird comparison, but stay with me for a moment, right? A med kit is hypothetically better with more value, right? But also the potion, right? You don't need space to actually activate the value. It's just there, right? That's a really bad comparison. But you get the point. Unfortunately, we are gonna lose this eventually. I did a little bit of cheesing after the dwarf died. Only a little bit of cheesing, okay? But this is where it performs really well, though. It does have, again, the time to attack, like time to damage, is really good on the Javelin. So it's way easier, also because of the extra dodge, to do a dodge dance with a boss. Like here, take a shot, go back to melee weapon, right? That's where it would outperform the longbow, for example, right? Because you'd have a harder time getting the space, drawing the shot, taking the shot, getting back to your other weapon. But you'd be able to do that more consistently, though, because you wouldn't have to recall your arrows. So, you know, it's a win-lose situation, right? There are some things it's better at, some things it's worse at. But overall, I do think it's a very interesting niche weapon. And I say niche because I should be careful what I say here, but I don't currently see it It's not the meta weapon in my world, at least. I'm always willing to be proven wrong here. Again, I'm not saying that. I'm sure you can get it to work on any difficulty. Absolutely. But the skill requirement is high. It is a risky weapon to play with, comparatively speaking, to the Moonfire bow. Let's see, and then with a little bit of cheating here, killed the boss. Did an amazing assassin dodge, though.
There, got the runner.
Woo! That's a good dodge, just saying. But yeah, not much more happens. I killed the boss, I ran up, and then I did a really stupid rest. I ran out of patience here. After killing the boss, I ran up here. This was really stupid. I should have taken another circle. I'm actually a little bit embarrassed. So I thought I could go for the rest here, right? Oh, but I couldn't see. I don't know if you saw that. It looked so clear, right? Up until I'm like, yeah, a few trash minions. Oh fuck, that's more than a few trash minions, and that essentially killed me. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. Sort of in conclusion, the Javelin is an amazingly fun weapon. I think it is absolutely amazingly fun. Okay, it is absolute satisfaction in ranged form, right? It just is like the cleave and the like brah piercing effect, so nice, and the feeling when you just, you know, get that quick stab kill and then throw a double javelin, right? Feels so good. But it's also really difficult. Like the skill requirement of the weapon is really high. It is very important that you have the right breakpoints, because unlike the longbow has breakpoints, which I have a whole segment about in my handmaiden guide if you want to check that out. But the breakpoints there are sort of they're way more flexible and sort of easier, at least on kata, they're easier to attain. You just already have the one-shot headshot breakpoint. It's just built into the longbow, right? There's no breakpoint. You don't need anything. You just headshot, it's dead. So you're only looking for a body shot breakpoint, right? Or it might be a different minion. Well, it has that headshot multiplier, and I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's very important that you research those breakpoints, because if you don't and you play it on kata, if you just go by feel on this one, then I feel like, you know, then suddenly you need 3 shots on the body for a 𝒮𝔴𝔞𝔤𝔢𝔯𝒮𝔮𝔲, you need 3 shots on the body for a Mauler, you need 2 shots, no 3. You need 2 shots on the body for a Storm Vermin, but you would also need 2 shots in the head for a Storm Vermin, and you would need 2 shots in the head for a Strangler, and like there's just a couple of very important minions where, you know, you really want to hit those breakpoints. So make sure to do that. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, like, comment, and subscribe. It took a long time to make. Been grinding out for a few days, but finally, it seems I have peace and quiet. Peace and quiet. So nice. Anyways, as always, I love you guys. Stay awesome. Peace out. Here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing. I lied to you. I haven't, in fact, slept at all. Like, at all. Not even a little bit. It is now 08:23 AM, which means in exactly 7 minutes, a bunch of people will be here and make a whole lot of noise. And like this past month, there's been so much noise. Renovations of apartments, and now this. I stand before you, a broken man. A broken man. With broken ears, okay?
Hold kæft, jeg har stadig set din skærm, den bulede. Det er for vildt, det
der. Nå, sådan en køft måned.